Now, they are essential to life on Earth, but environmentalists say the world's forests are under threat from the inaction of corporations. Forests cover almost 1/3 of the land area of the planet. Their ecosystems are critical components of the world's biodiversity, all those animals and plants. And of course, their trees produce oxygen while sucking in our carbon dioxide emissions. However, it's estimated that since 1990, 420 million hectares of forest have been lost through conversion to other land uses. That is an area the size of the EU. Agricultural expansion is the main cause of that. Large-scale commercial farming accounted for 40% of tropical deforestation between 2000 and 2010. Vast amounts of land are being cleared for grazing cows or cultivating soya beans and also palm oil. Well, at the Climate 26 summit in Glasgow, the COP26 summit, world leaders agreed to end deforestation by 2030. But a report published today says the majority of companies who could be doing something about it are not. Well, we can now speak to Nikki Mardas from the environmental organisation Global Canopy, which actually published this report. Just first up, thanks for joining us. Can you explain to us what your conclusion was from your research?
Well, thanks very much for having me on, Rob. So the Forest 500 report published today shows that business and finance are failing on deforestation. I mean, that's the quick take-home message, and that's contributing to climate change, as you say, biodiversity loss and impacts on communities worldwide. So our report looked at the 350 companies most linked to the commodities that you mentioned that drive deforestation, 150 biggest financial institutions, and we're seeing that still, after many years of pressure and claims of action, we've got 1/3 of those companies, the world's biggest in this regard, who have no policies at all, ignoring the issue. Major food companies like Lactalis, the world's biggest cheesemaker, fashion houses, well-known fashion houses from TK Maxx all the way to Versace. And then we look at financial institutions and we see an even less engagement. So 2/3, this report shows, of financial institutions, including 3 of the world's biggest, the biggest investors, have no policies on deforestation, and collectively they're putting 5.5 trillion into these high-risk sectors. That's twice the GDP of the UK.
But if I could just interject, why do you think the onus should be so much on the corporations rather than the governments that control these jurisdictions?
Well, look, we have collective responsibility for all of this. It's worth saying that these products end up in 50% of the products in our supermarkets. So we're all part of a global deforestation economy. And you mentioned COP26. What was encouraging there is that we saw an agreement between 140 plus companies representing 90% of the world's forests, but also consumer markets. China, the world's biggest market for deforestation products, made a commitment, the EU and others. And we're beginning to see laws coming into place that will put pressure on companies and make it mandatory for them to understand these issues and report on them. So it doesn't all fall on the companies, but the reality is that the companies are playing a critical role. And what we see from today's report is that they're not stepping up and doing enough.
And what are companies telling you, briefly if you can, about why they're not acting as much as you would like them to be?
Well, I think it's been, this is complicated. So we hear that there are issues around transparency, the complexity of supply chains. So if you're a retailer in Europe, for instance, you've got to get visibility down your supply chain. So we're not asking for magical solutions, but we are saying that companies need to engage with their suppliers, ask them to ensure that they don't have deforestation in their products, and then be transparent about what they're finding out so that we can see who's taking action. So really we're calling for transparency, accountability, and a stepwise approach to taking action.
OK, Nikki Mardas from Global Canopy, thanks for joining us on D2B Business.
Thanks so much.